Remember back in 2019 when the running tech world felt entirely dominated by one massive player? If you wanted a serious GPS watch, you essentially bought a Garmin. But right around that time, a massive disruption happened. And that was the year I bought the original Coros Apex. For me, that watch was an absolute revelation. Before the Apex came along, if you wanted a premium durability like a titanium bezel or a sapphire glass screen, you had to drop $600 or $700 on a rugged, heavy adventure watch. Coros completely changed that, literally turning the industry on its head. They gave us those elite materials at a mid-tier price point. But more than anything, they introduced the running world to a legendary, seemingly infinite battery life. For years, the original Apex was my anchor of my daily training. I tracked my weekly mileage, calculated all my recovery and my training load, and helped me build my running foundation, right? Step by step, kilometer by kilometer, mile by mile. Every single mile logged on that watch was about consistency, showing up, keeping my heart rate in check, slow running, and slowly stacking those blocks of fitness one run at a time and building fitness. But as the years rolled along, technology shifted like it always does, and screens got brighter, processors got faster, and that, like my Apex from 2019, eventually maxed out and kind of fell apart. I ran thousands of kilometers, thousands of miles with this watch, and it was seamless. It just always worked. However, eventually what started to happen was the inside the digital display started to go. It started to kind of like melt. And then my heart rate monitor stopped working on this and I had to go by perceived effort. And I reached out to the company and I asked them for some help, and they sent me another watch. This is the second watch in that. But yeah, that's when things started to change, when it was time for an upgrade. And that's when I took a massive step in the Coros ecosystem. Hence, here we are in the Vertex 2 era. Now this watch was sent to me by Coros. They reached out and asked if I could do a review, and I said, sure. Now here's the thing. This watch has a massive 1.4 inch screen. It's a titanium build. And when it came time to replace my Apex, I jumped over to this absolute powerhouse of a lineup, right? This Coros Vertex 2, holy smokes, unbelievable. You know, from the Apex to the Vertex, an entirely different experience between these two watches. Now this watch was built like a tank. It brought an always-on 1.4 inch display and a massive 5-grade titanium bezel, right? Offline global mapping right literally onto my wrist. But the feature that blew my mind was the battery life. I mean, we're talking about 140 hours of standard GPS tracking. Like, that's insane. I could train for weeks on end, logging high mileage runs on the trail over the weeks, and I completely forgot where I left my charging cable half the time. I didn't know where it was. Now, the Vertex 2 also introduced dual frequency satellite tracking, meaning my GPS lines on my standard running route were completely flawless. No matter how dense the tree cover canopy or the cities that I ran in, it was honestly incredible. It was literally bulletproof, and it's still today, it's still rocking. But it was an amazing training partner that handled every ounce of pavement or trail that I threw at it. I wiped out more times than I can count with this watch. But as my running evolved, I realized something. While I love the incredible indestructible build, the massive battery of the Vertex 2, it's big, okay? It's heavy on my wrist. When you're trying to focus on pure, lightweight running, it's like 75 grams. This is a heavy watch, right? And that brings us to exactly where I am today. But before I get into that, I have to say that the digital crown right here, this button, it's died a slow death. For about 6 months, it started to go. Like I would push the button in and I couldn't activate any of I couldn't activate anything. I couldn't start a run, couldn't do anything, and it doesn't do anything now. And I think, I mean, it still charges, it still does everything, it still does heart rate, it still does everything, except I can't even get in to do a run with this. So it just stopped one day, and I was like, now what am I going to do? So that's when I reached back to my original Apex, and I thought, hey, I'm going to use this. But what happened was I picked it up, and it said that, what did it say? It said action required, and it had a countdown of 14 days. And then it had a QR code. So I scanned the QR code with my phone, but it took me to a screen that I guess had expired. Well, I reached out to Coros, and they said, hey, we're so sorry about that. There was a recall on the Apex, and you are eligible for one because you bought the watch. So all the way from 2019, they turned around and sent me a $350 voucher for whatever I want to buy on their website. So I ended up buying another watch, but we'll get into that in just a minute. Now the tool on my wrist right now has changed once again. And nowadays, look, I'm logging every single one of my new miles with my brand new Coros Pace 4. Moving from the massive, rugged Vertex 2 down to the Pace series is wild experience. Never done it before. The very first thing I noticed literally was the weight rather than the lack of it. At just 32 ounces with the nylon or with the silicone, this thing completely disappears on my wrist.
Yeah, I think the Pace 4 is pretty awesome.
When you go deep on a long run and you're trying to maintain a relaxed, efficient form, the last thing you want is a heavy piece of hardware bouncing around. That's what I found with this guy. But the real showstopper here was literally the display. Coros brought a beautiful 1.2-inch AMOLED display to the Pace 4, coming from an older muted one, kind of like with the pixels and of the Apex and whatnot. Absolute joy to look at. It's so vibrant. It hits around 1500 nits of peak brightness, meaning whether I'm running under the glaring direct midday sun or I'm navigating in a dark, dim early morning fog, look, my pace, distance, heart rate zones are instantly readable. I mean, it's so easy. And with a split second glance, it's like, boom, it rocks. And they also upgraded the build quality by putting a mineral glass screen on it. Now, adding a physical action button, which they did, it's on this side here, it also goes along with the other two buttons. So it feels fast, feels modern. It's I don't know, it's built entirely around efficiency for a runner. But here's where the real kind of debate starts. When you're looking at a dedicated, high performance running watch in this category, you'll obviously you're also going to face a giant in the room, and you have to compare it to the latest equivalent, which is the Garmin, specifically the Forerunner 165 or the 265. So here's the thing. I don't have either of those watches. Let's talk about how the Pace 4 matches up against the latest Forerunners, because on paper, they look incredibly similar, right? Both Garmin and Coros have embraced the beautiful AMOLED screen. Both feature incredible lightweight technology, fiber, re-induced polymer shells. But when you look beneath the surface, the core philosophies of the two brands they couldn't be more different, I guess. So let's break down the advantages that made me choose the Coros Pace as my absolute preferred running watch over the Garmin equivalent. Dual frequency GPS as a standard. Look, here's the thing. First up is your GPS tracking accuracy. That to me is so important. And the Coros Pace comes equipped with the dual frequency or the multi-band satellite tracking as a standard feature, something I grew to love in my Vertex 2. So Garmin offers this on their higher end Forerunner, which is the 265. Obviously more money. But if you look at their entry-level AMOLED watch, the Forerunner 165, you're locked into this single band GPS. So why does the dual frequency matter for me as an everyday runner? Look, my route's never the same, right? So if your route takes you under like heavy tree canopy or through rolling hills or past tall buildings in a city, the single band GPS can get confused, leading to kind of jagged tracks and inaccurate time pacing. The pace locks on to two different satellite frequencies simultaneously for flawless accuracy. And that's something that I really enjoyed with my Vertex. Now, the battery life discrepancy is next in its classic Coros calling card pretty much. The battery efficiency is wild. Garmin makes great watches, but their AMOLED screens pull a massive amount of power. For the Forerunner 165, gets you about 19 hours of standard GPS tracking. The Coros 4 literally shatters it, squeezing out a massive 41 hours of continuous GPS tracking and up to 19 days of standard daily use. I'm still going to lose my power cable, I'm sure. While it's not the 140 hours of my Vertex 2, for a watch that is light and thin, it is completely dominates the competition. And for me, that's important. I can comfortably go a week or more with heavy training without ever thinking about, charging or trying to find my cable. I mean, I do have to find it eventually. The control layout buttons versus the crown. Then there's the physical interaction. Garmin uses the classic 5-button layout, and it's a great system, but it can feel incredibly cluttered from what some of my friends have mentioned. Coros uses a minimal approach. It's got 3. It's got the digital crown, a back button, and a dedicated action button. And when you're out running intervals or pushing hard on a tempo run, a simple flick of the thumb scrolls smoothly through your data screens without ever covering up the display. It's simple. I mean, it's touchscreen too, so you've got multiple options. Look, beyond the spec sheet, the absolute biggest reason the Pace 4 is my preferred watch comes down to ecosystem philosophy, basically. Look, Garmin wants to be that lifestyle watch, right? They pack their devices with so much stuff. I used to have one of the Forerunners, but they've added so much stuff like the Garmin Play, third-party music streaming apps, and heavy smartwatch notifications. For some people, it's great, but for me, it just creates a lot of extra noise and a lot of extra things I got to deal with. I'm sure Coros has some of that, but I've really gotten used to mine as well. Maybe I'm biased, but Coros takes a completely different approach, I think. They don't try to be mediocre smartwatch. They try to be an elite training tool. I'm not elite, but hey, who doesn't like elite training tools, right? The interface is refreshingly uncluttered. There's no corporate sponsorship tiers floating in the background, and there's no digital bloat maybe, right? I may be biased. I could be biased. However, everything is poured into the Coros Evo Labs, and it's the training hub that tracks fitness, real-time training loads, and recovery times. It even features a built-in microphone. Yeah, I got a microphone on this. And it allows me to record a quick verbal training logs, voice pins as it's used, mid-run, so I can capture exactly how my legs are feeling, how the run is going, and I can just put it right into my watch, and it can appear in my training app. And if I have a coach, I can share that with them, which kind of makes, it's so interactive. It's really cool to be able to do that. So when I look down at my pace on my wrist today, okay, I realized that while technology has completely evolved since I bought that original Apex back 7 years ago, or when I was running with the massive Vertex 2, the underlying philosophy hasn't changed a bit. The tools we wear always get lighter, brighter, faster. Technology changes, but at the end of the day, a watch can't do the work for you. It's simply a mirror reflecting the effort that you put in. It just records what's going on. The Coros Pace 4 takes all of those years of data, that's aerobic foundation that I have started building years ago, and it helps me fine-tune my pacing, protect my recovery, and train smarter than I have before. And if you're a runner who wants a clean, hyper-focused, incredibly lightweight, extremely accurate training partner with stunning screen, battery, heart rate accuracy, and refuses to die, the Pace 4 is what a running watch should be. Look, the tools may change, but the spirit of the run stays exactly the same. And like I always say, thanks for hanging out with me today. Keep putting in those miles, track your progress, and I'll see you out there on the next one. So like I always say, get out and run.